Hello, everybody. Welcome to Productivity Mastery, the podcast that is bringing you some of the leading experts in the world in areas connected to productivity, performance, business, and entrepreneurship. And I have another exceptional guest joining me today, one of the leading experts in neurodiversity, an author of a brilliant book. Theo, maybe show us the book so we can have a first glimpse. The book is Neurodiversity at Work: Drive Innovation, Performance, and Productivity with a Neurodiverse Workforce. That's right. That's right. He's an author of the book. He's an exceptional speaker as well, going to conferences, sharing his message, and he's also a very caring leader, among other things. So, Theo, great to have you, brother. How are you today?
Wow, thank you. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. That's a lovely introduction. And yeah, I'm passionate about these things here. Really happy to be here and with you today.
And you have your coffee with you, right?
Yes. I might have drank most of it now, but it was nice. That's how quickly it goes.
There you go. There you go. That's how we roll. All right, Theo. There's many people now tuning in, and they're probably trying to figure out what the F is neurodiversity. Tell us what is neurodiversity for those people who are hearing the term for the first in the first place.
Wow, neurodiversity. Right, it sounds a bit of a complicated word. I think for a lot of people, they'd hear neurodiversity and think, I'm struggling to really get beyond gender diversity, let alone neurological diversity. But it's important. And the reason why it's important is because it's every single one of us. We are all neurodiverse. Like a thumbprint, every single one of our brains is unique. Our brains, 160 billion brain cells, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, on depending on who you are, right? That's a lot of brain cells. So if your thumbprint is unique, imagine 160 billion brain cells. That is incredibly unique because the variations in our thumbprints are not as complex as that. So when we put that into context, that could scare you even more. It's like too many things to consider. But it's important because that means that when we consider every single human being's brain being unique, then if we can tap into that unique brain and fully understand its preferences, how it likes to learn, the journey it goes through, how it works within particular environments, how to get the best out of it. Like if we can fully understand that, we can transform our working environments, our lived environments, our education environments, right? We can really make significant and impactful change. So that's neurodiversity broadly being everybody. But when we're really talking around neurodiversity at the moment, we're talking around the neurodiversity movement. And we're talking about those people who are neurodivergent or neurodiverse, depending on your preference for terminology. Those people who don't fit into what they say neurotypicals. What we mean by that is people who've been marginalized or system impacted because of the way that their brain works, right? Because they may be autistic or on the autism spectrum, or they may be dyslexic or be ADHD or dyscalculic, or there's a wide variety of other variations that happen within the brain that may mean that the education system didn't fit your needs, or that the work environment didn't fit your needs, or the built environment didn't fit your needs. But for a long time, it was hidden, right? It's a hidden disability in certain contexts, right? You are being disabled from achieving the things you are able to do, but because of what other people put in place in front of you, you can't do them. So that's what we really consider when we talk about neurodiversity. It's how can we have a better world, enable more people to have better access just because of the way that their brain works, and that in the past they've had barriers put up to them, and we want to take those barriers away and enable everybody to have a better experience within our world and within our work environment.
And I really believe this is a kind of episode that everybody needs to listen to. As you said, we are all diverse neurologically, each of us is very different. We sometimes tend to act and expect from others to act the same way as we do. And it's very interesting that I read this research, this number that I think you shared it on a different podcast, that up to 20% of the people are actually considered neurodiverse, fall into some of these categories. So whether you know it or not, some of your colleagues, some of the people from your team, they're already falling in this category. And I'm very curious and excited to go there. But before we actually dig into neurodiversity at work, I actually want to hear your story, Theo, because you have such an interesting story. And just to understand, for people also to understand, how was it for you to grow up and to kind of see the world a little differently, be a little different? And was it the struggle? Did you have a supportive environment? And was that also the reason for you to decide to embark on a journey and talk about these kind of topics?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I grew up in a nice family, good family, supported, but working class. My parents didn't go to university until later on in life. Both of them went into the RAF, into military careers early on, because that was all that was available to them. So at the age of 16 and 17, my mum was pregnant by the age of 17 with my with my sister. And therefore, their lives didn't have many options, right? So then I was born into the world, and in a way, I was left to my own ends in some respects. And I found the education system really challenging. I didn't fit in. I found learning very difficult. I never really did any homework. However, there were other aspects to my life that worked really well. So I used to get into a lot of trouble. I used to get frustrated, had a lot of energy, and didn't know how to use that energy, so often used it for negative reasons. If you were sat outside the head teacher's classroom because you've not been behaving yourself at lunchtime, well, then you weren't using up any energy. So rather than getting better because you've been told off and sat outside the classroom, you got worse because you had all this energy you need to get rid of, that the teachers wouldn't let you get rid of because you were being told off and missing out on your lunchtime break. So all these experiences started to mean that I started to get into a bit of trouble.
Just for people to get a context, which of the things that we mentioned you can relate to? You mentioned dyslexia. Like, which are the ones that you can say I relate to being associated with these?
Well, it's interesting. At this point, I couldn't with any because we didn't know. There wasn't a thing. I didn't get diagnosed with dyslexia until I went to university as a mature student. So all I was diagnosed with was a problem child, trouble. Somebody in the end, I stopped going to school and the teachers didn't care. So this was happening, right? So how does somebody who fails at school, doesn't get any qualifications, gets into a lot of trouble, how does that person go from there to becoming an author of a leading business book, 110,000 words? That's 2 PhD theses, right? I wrote there in terms of research, evidence, and incorporating new and innovative ideas, right? That's 2 PhDs. I've not got them, but, theoretically, that's the amount of effort and energy that goes into over a 3 to 5 year period. How does that person end up getting to this point? And I'll tell you, it's because our education systems, our environments are not set up even today for a child who's dyslexic at that point. Now, I then managed to do okay in life because my mum got me involved in drama to get me off the streets, to get me out of trouble when I was about 10. Now, part of drama is speech and language. So part of the challenge I had was speech and language as well as writing. And so the idea and concept of using drama almost as a mechanism to get me on my feet, to use language, to communicate, to engage, actually developed me in a different way outside of the school system that massively helped me. And outside of school, I was doing really well in drama with community groups. And I was getting revered for my work because I'm a risk taker. So on stage, in front of people, I'm willing to go much further than other people are in terms of building character, building energy, and all other the aspects of that are respected in the arts. However, in the classroom, they weren't respected as much. So what happened is I almost took two journeys. The one of somebody being revered, musician, artist, drama, and in the school, failure, not turning up, couldn't get any qualifications. But what happens is as you go on and the academic bit falls away, you have to go and get a job and build a life for yourself. And as I started to maneuver through my life, I found that the skills that they didn't appreciate as much in school were appreciated in other environments, in business context, depending on what the role, whether it's sales or communication within marketing and within recruitment, where you have to talk to lots of people. So I built what was a very successful career in recruitment. And it wasn't until 4 or 5 years ago that I watched a program, ADHD and Me, with Rory Bremner, who's a comedian, political satirist. He went on the journey of finding out that he's probably ADHD. As I found out, lots of comedians and lots of actors are autistic or dyslexic or ADHD. And one of the other big light bulb moments for me then was that you can be more than one. So I associate with autism, dyslexia, ADHD, and who knows what else. And that is complex because when you start to think about that, that's not one box to say Theo struggles with spelling and reading, but Theo also may struggle with engaging and communicating with people in a certain way. I may miss certain things that you would want to share with
by the way, guys, I just Theo, if you don't mind, I'm gonna share a personal example because I think it's gonna make sense. So Theo is a friend now. We have a common business partner, Marian, an amazing Marian Temelko from Dynamis Group. What can I say? Amazing, caring leader. And since I was preparing for my TEDx talk, which I just delivered a few days ago, Theo was kind enough to jump and to provide feedback when I was rehearsing, and actually was excellent, right? Like I did my I did a take on the speech, and then he started coming up with feedback and creative ideas, and you have to improve that. And there was a point that you were like, what did you say, dear? Because my brain doesn't work this way. I forget some things. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. So I showed you the slide once again, right? So what I'm saying is he was so creative, he was so spot on, he was so sharp, but then there were some certain things that, if you don't know, if he wasn't self-aware, and he's very self-aware, he might feel a little off, right? You might feel like, ooh, I'm forgetting stuff or whatever. Like, yeah, but that's not your superpower. Your superpower is you provided me with by the way, I'm super grateful. Thank you so much for this so-called coaching session that you guys did for me. But really, this is, I think it's a great example of how understanding your strengths, understanding your superpowers, and also understanding which are some areas that you're probably not so good at, which everybody has. Everybody has strengths in areas that they're not so good at. It can really help every individual to perform better, but also having this awareness in a team can help the whole team to know each other better and perform better as a team. Having this kind of caring environment and culture that is setting people for success, no matter where they come from, what their strengths are. So I just wanted to share this example, Theo, which kind of really makes it maybe more understandable for people listening. But go on. The story is super interesting. Then, and I'm actually curious to hear from you, because I can imagine many people will relate to some of those things. What did you find are your superpowers? Like, what are some of the things that you personally find it's very easy for me, it's natural, I'm extremely good at this?
Yeah, well, you touched on some of it there, but the way I describe it is kryptonite, right? And you've got somebody like Superman and Superman can fly, shoot lasers from his eyes. He can do incredible things. So in that moment, Superman is energized and feels strong and powerful, and everybody, Superman's incredible. But you put Kryptonite in a room with Superman, he can't do anything. He's completely disabled, cannot move. So within a blink of an eye, Superman goes from somebody who you revere to somebody who's completely disabled, right? And it's not Superman's fault. We implemented the kryptonite, or someone implemented the kryptonite that stopped Superman being able to do the things that he can do. And what you talked about there is exactly that. If I'm in my flow and I'm able to focus on the things that I'm good at, I feel energized and excited, and therefore I can solve problems for people. Now, if you had a turn around and gone, which has happened to me in the past, oh, you keep forgetting things. What do you mean you can't remember that slide? I can't believe you can't remember that slide. I've just done that slide with you and now you can't remember it. Whoa, like the balance of power has shifted. And I'm thinking, whoa, no, I can't remember. And I've sat in interviews where all they've done is gone, what was the date of that? Give me the exact figure you did that. You can't remember the figure? Did you do it? But yeah, I did do it, but I can't remember the exact thing. So before you know it, that interview has turned into an interrogation, and I am sweating. I feel really uncomfortable, and I feel completely disabled in that moment. So even though I tell you the strengths, what's really important is how we treat other people and how we understand that, it's cause and effect, right? What we do has an impact on other people. If we want to show that somebody doesn't have the capability to do something, we can do that, right? It doesn't mean they've not got the capability to do it. It means that we are able to manipulate the situation in such a way that we can disprove the world is round and we can prove it's flat, right? Because we're in the powerful position to be able to do that. And we see that within teams, within environments, within interview processes all the time. Some clever so-and-so who's going to disprove the person who's in front of them, whether it's their employee, whether it's a person in a recruitment process or whatever it is, or a friend that they're meeting up with to show that they're better and they know more than them. So we can empower people to be their best selves, and we can empower people to lean into their strengths, or we can disable them, right? And that's our choice. Now, so my strengths are exactly what you've mentioned. They're the ability to be highly creative. I'm highly adaptive to change. So if you know of the change curve, right? And people go through this change curve at different speeds. And so that if you go into an organization and go, right, we're doing complete transformation of the business, the technology, the processes, you get some people, it will take them years potentially to go through that change curve. And maybe they'll never make it, right? Because the way their brain works and everything else, it'd be too difficult. So you need to really work and support them closely. You get other people who can literally go through that change curve really quickly. I am that person. Like the minute you've said it and you've allowed me the time to think about it and consider it, I'm like, let's go. Let's go. We're going to completely transform this company and I'm ready to do it the next day. Let's do it. But what I'm not very good at doing then, on the other side, the kryptonite, is the person to map out every aspect of what that will look like over the period, what we're going to do, how we're going to implement it. Like that probably is the person who's going to go through that change curve more slowly, because they're going to have a keen critical eye on it. They're already going to be thinking about, oh no, what's the step like in a minute, in 5 minutes, in an hour, the next day, the day after. They're already thinking about all those steps. That is really powerful. And it's the same as expecting them overnight to just completely change. They're not going to do it. But I can change overnight, but I'm not going to do the detail. And it's really important to fundamentally understand the learning styles, the approaches, how people consume information and knowledge, and then how they transfer that into the work and the stuff that they do. And we've got a lot of tech companies, smaller, fast growth organizations now have more neurologically diverse talent, right? And almost accidentally. And they have incredible opportunities now to transform the way that we do work. Some of the bigger organizations will already have a neurologically diverse workforce, but just not know what to do with them. And if they go through change transformation, that's where they struggle.
Maybe that's actually very interesting. As many executives, entrepreneurs listening to the podcast, and I wonder if you were hired in a team, in a company, how would you like to be treated so the company get the best of your performance?
Oh, me personally, yeah. So, well, the thing is, if I go into an organization, something that's really important that gets forgotten is not everybody understands this as well as I do, right? So, what we tend to do is we go, tick this box if you're disabled, okay? I'm not ticking the box because I've never been classified as disabled, although neurodiversity, if you're neurodivergent, if you're autistic or dyslexic or ADHD, in a lot of regions of the world, it is classified as a disability. So, like, that's my only option, and I don't consider myself to fall into that box because nobody's ever told me I belong in that box. So, one of the big challenges we've got is I don't know how to tell you if I'm other people as well as myself. I don't know how to tell you the things you need to know about me, and you're not asking, right? So either it fails in the recruitment process or it fails onboarding. So I'm dyslexic. I take about 3 to 4 times longer to read something. Right. Yeah, I wrote a book, right? Which is crazy, but I know that other people need to access information in that way. So I create videos as well. But the reality is, if you give me information on day one and say, there's the health and safety document, there's the how to use this technology document, there's the how you need to act document, here's the, right? You've just given me, it's going to take me 4 times as long to learn all of those things than someone else. So 2 people join on day one, right? We've got the same capability to do the job, but you've just given me a load of stuff that's going to take me 3 to 4 times longer to achieve before I can even start my job. So in a month's time, when I've just finished reading all this stuff and the other person finished in week 1, they're already ahead of me. And you're already, as a manager, thinking, this Theo, he's nowhere near as good as this other person. So your mindset has already deemed me a failure on that basis. And then you may continue to do that right throughout my time in that job. And therefore, it's not about my ability to do the job. It's about my ability to access the information, the guidance in the way that you're presenting it. Now, that's learning and development or onboarding. You can translate that to any part of the employee life cycle, right? Any part of it. And this doesn't matter whether you're the HR director, a VP of tech, or whatever other job you've got, or whether you're entry level, an admin job. It's the same negative experience that you're getting. And therefore, you're putting people under significant pressure because you've not fully understood how to look after them based on the way that their brain works, right? Which is critical. So you need to support me in ensuring that I have everything I need to knock my job out of the park. And if you're not doing that, you, the employer, the leader, the HR, if you're not doing that, that's your responsibility and where you're failing the candidate, not where they're failing you. They will try to tell you if they can, but because it's a neurological difference, they may not have a diagnosis. They may not know they're dyslexic. They may not know they take 3 times or 4 times as long to read as somebody else. They may still be coming into an organization going, goodness, that everyone else seems to get this stuff really quickly. I don't know why. So that's why we as organizations, we as leaders, we as businesses need to have a keen critical eye on this to think, are we doing the right thing by our employees? And if they're slower to take stuff on, is it because they're no good at the job or they're no good in the brain? Or is it actually because there's stuff that we're doing that's not making this environment accessible to them so that they can smash that job out of the park?
This is fantastic, man. And I'm wondering now, based on what you're just sharing, you currently making some fantastic innovations also in terms of talent attraction on a highest level, working with, I would say, one of the most caring companies in this industry, right? The Dynamis Group. But not just caring company, which is fantastic, but really innovative. And I'm just wondering, is there any kind of new way to look at recruitment and talent attraction? Like, do you guys kind of have a consult leaders to make a strategy where part of the, like, you consciously looking for people who are neurodiverse in some way, like how do we do that, right? Like, do we, because nobody, correct me if I'm wrong, but nobody says on their uh, CV probably, right? Like, I have an ADHD and dyslexia, right? Uh, or are people doing that at the moment? Because that's going to help companies that actually want to have a neurodiverse workforce.
Yes, so a number of things on that. So first of all, LinkedIn have just launched dyslexic thinking as a skill. So you can put as a skill on LinkedIn, dyslexic thinking. Now, maybe controversial. Some people, I like it, but some people may go, no, but you can't really have dyslexic thinking because even dyslexic people think differently. So what's dyslexic thinking? However, I see this as a move to start to see neurodiversity, these different traits as strengths. And that's really important. So as an organization, you asked a few questions here. Let me start with the kind of the focus thing of some of the tangible things that you can do. So, and then I'll talk to you about what I'm doing with Dynamis Group and some of the other stuff that we're doing, which is more strategic, broader, and going to solve the problem on a global scale. Initially, what you can do is, if you think about your process, right? What we have at the moment in most places is a box to tick to say, can we make reasonable adjustments? So if you're in a wheelchair and you tick reasonable adjustments, it might be, can I access the building? Have you got a lift? Can I get into the building for the interview? Can you make an adjustment so I can get into the building? Or can we have the interview somewhere else? Because, you know, I want to be able to interview for this job. Right? So that's on the one basis. But for most other people, it's more nuanced. So what you need to do, like if it was a consumer journey, if you had somebody going along a journey and then you wanted them to buy the product, if you were losing them at any part of this journey, you would want to know why. If they got really close to buying a product, they were about to click on the buy now button, you really want to get close to those people because they were about to buy, right? This is what we need to think about candidates and employees. If the candidate gets right through and we're losing them, why are we losing them, right? And if we ask the question, and what I find is if you ask the question, for example, how can we make this experience better for you? Is there anything that we can change about what we are doing or what we do as part of this process? Please tell us, and make it simple for them to tell you, like respond to this email or click this button, or, you know, should we be doing anything different? Yes. For start, just click that button. Right, we now know we should be doing something different. We can now explore what that is. So, like, simplify it. But that's what we're looking at. And then what you'll find, and I know this because I've seen it, I've done it, and I've advised other organizations who've done it, is candidates start to go, yes, there is something you could do. And those who have a diagnosis of dyslexia from very early on, that got a lot of support in the education system, will be used to going, well, actually, can I have more time for the exam? Can I have the questions for the interview up front? Can I have? Now, then you decide what is reasonable and what works and how to deliver it. But at least you know. If you don't ask the question, you don't know, right? And that's what I get frustrated with. People fear asking the question. I had this recruitment leader who came up to me and said, I've got an interview tomorrow and the candidate wants to bring their mum on the call. I'm like, okay. And he's like, tell me more. And he said, well, he's said that he's on the autism spectrum and he wants to bring his mum. I said, you know why? I think, you know, to support him. Anyway, the reality is now, through data, evidence, government guidance, we now know that some people on the autism spectrum require a job coach because they may be non-verbal, they may have other challenges that make it difficult in the recruitment and assessment process and onboarding, like I told you, with the way that we get people to learn information, that they need a coach. In that instance, in the interview process, his mum was just providing him the coach, the support, because often we don't ask questions that make sense. We ask nuanced questions. So we might say, tell us of a time when you did X and tell us this. And by the way, answer that at the same time. For somebody who's on the autism spectrum, ADHD, you may have completely confused them. And therefore, you either don't get an answer or they go off on a tangent. So it's these, so like they're the tangible things. I've got a ton of these things you could do, right? So you could reach out to me, and we advise companies on what to do. But that's a very simple example of a change that you can make in a process that is impactful, powerful, gets feedback. Data is powerful and can inform decision making, and also lets candidates know you care because you're asking. And if you ask, even if you don't get it quite right, people don't often get asked. So they feel it, they feel the love of being asked, right? And therefore they're likely to give you some feedback, and that can help change process. So that's the one bit. Plenty of tangible things that we can do for our employees, current employees, and for people going through the process. Now, the other bit is you said, what, the Dynamis Group, and how can organizations think of this on a bigger scale? So one, I go in and I give talks, a bit like the TED Talk. I transform organizations' ways of thinking. I've talked to thousands of employees online in one go for like Zalando, Wayfair, Logitech the other day in partnership with Dynamis Group. And the feedback is that it transforms their way of thinking. Right, so that's the one bit, because we're at a stage at this moment in time where people don't understand what neurodiversity is. They struggle to get their head around it, and therefore in 30 minutes you've got to transform their thinking.
Then, by the way, guys, if you guys love Theo on the podcast, you gotta see him on a keynote when he gets the stage. That guy is a beast in a most positive way. So go on, Theo.
Thank you. But that's part of it, right? I got one chance there to stand up, and that's a moment of just quiet space where I can take them on the journey, and I can knock that message home so that people just get it at different levels, because that's important, that people at all different levels understand it and go, right, I understand it now. What can I do in my piece of the world to make the difference? So what we're then doing with the Dynamis Group is they've introduced me at board level to organizations, so I can start to work with them to think about this, and then they can support that through the different areas of the organization. So whether that's through their D&I teams, through their recruitment teams, through their HR teams, through their global workforce. So we get them inspired, and then we start to look at it. The other bit we do with organizations, which people can do themselves, right? But we can help organizations that may struggle, is to audit their processes. So that we can do this in a small or bigger way. And I've done this with HR tech companies and other tech companies. So I see it from an organizational standpoint, because I've worked as a HR leader and a recruitment leader in that space, but I've also worked in tech companies. And now I've advised both. So what do most organizations use in their processes? Technology. So I advise those technologies on how to be more neuro-inclusive. I've then gone into the organization and advised them on what they should be considering. Marry those two, put those two together, and that's powerful. So we can consult and advise on that basis. And then the other piece is we're building digital training content where each employee can do their own training, and then they get a certification, say they complete that training. And then we're building technology to solve this in the recruitment process to make it more accessible for all based on individual learning preferences and styles and approaches. Again, we're focusing on everybody, right? Because you don't want to just say this is just for people who are on the autism spectrum. We need to make it inclusive to everybody because it's complex. The brain is complex, but it will have a positive impact on those who've been marginalized. As your point, the 20%, right? Could be 10%, 30%, but an approximate 20% of the population who are marginalized and system impacted. So they're the big things we're doing at the moment. And I'm doing it because my kids who are at home for Easter, right? My kids are being negatively impacted in the education environment. And I've seen it. And governments are transient, politicians are transient, and they're hard to influence. Organizations, leaders, parents are HR directors, parents are CEOs. I can influence them today. So you go away and make a difference tomorrow. I can do that today. And that's powerful. So that's why we're doing all of these things. And that's why I've partnered with the Dynamis Group, because they care, but because they have real good insight at the highest level within organizations. And when you connect those two things together, it's really powerful, and we can make the change required.
I can only confirm, as somebody who's also collaborated and partner up with Dynamis Group, that it's really super, super high level. At the same time, really coming from the heart, which is a really nice combination. So everybody who's interested in those things, make sure to check out Theo Smith and the Dynamis Group, maybe partner up with them. And when you were speaking, Theo, I'm all about productivity and team culture, you know me. And just just by awareness. Forget about talent attraction strategic, just by creating awareness about the things that we are talking about today towards throughout the organization, right? So people get to understand there's people that are neurodiverse, we act differently, our brains work differently, we need to understand each other. This is already 20% in productivity boost just by talking about it without anything else.
Even better than that, well, so 20% productivity boost, absolutely. So you've mentioned it well there, but if we just think about it, so put it into context. If you 22 in 10 of your employees, right, could be sat there now underperforming, not because they lack capability, right, but actually because the systems, the processes, the information that they have to hand does not suit their brain. Therefore, you're making them work harder just to keep up with average. So they're really having to work out, and that is exhausting. That's exhausting for mental health and well-being, right? So they could end up being off on sick longer because they're worn out, or they could leave sooner because they've had enough. And these could be your brightest minds, but you're not helping them. And that's, so when you talk about productivity, that is exactly it. 20% of those underperforming in your organization could theoretically be outperforming some of the other employees within the organization if you just stopped giving them the wrong tools. And to simplify it even more, you're giving right-handed scissors to left-handed people and expecting them to cut a straight line as good as somebody with right-handed scissors with the right hand, and then getting frustrated when they don't.
Theo, I'm getting fired up, man. Let me tell you a story on this. I listened to a podcast with John Maxwell. The guy just he's an exceptional. If you guys don't know who's John Maxwell, he written 85 books on leadership, the most published author on leadership ever. The guy is a legend. And he shared this story when he was back in college. He was playing for the basketball team. And they were doing quite well, but no matter which place they end up at the end of the year, next season, the coach is going to play them against each other, the first team against the second team. Only he will mix up the players from the first team. So the guard is not going to be a guard anymore. The center is not going to be a center anymore. Every time, the second team is going to beat the first team because they were better players, but they were out of position. And this is what you're telling me right now. Sometimes we get peak performance, but we just don't put them in a position to succeed, right? And something, my mathematical brain is coming here. As you know, I studied finance, and there was one sentence in my education that I'll keep hearing from the teachers. You got to seek for the arbitrage opportunity, right? There's a lot of entrepreneurs listening, and they're always seeking for, how can I get a great opportunity? And I'm just wondering right now, do you feel there's a lot of this, everybody's seeking, how do I attract the best talent, the top 1%, top 5%? Do you feel there's a lot of so-called underappreciated diamonds out there because they fall into some of these categories that are not normally, maybe not performing well at job interviews, maybe not so, regular in some processes? Do you feel there's this arbitrage opportunity, if we are smarter, to actually attract top level talent? We're specifically good in specific areas. Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah, so what we're talking about there is cognitive skills peaks in very specific areas. So whereas often what organizations will do is you'll go, right, you need to be good, especially big organizations with complex ways of assessing talent. You go, here's 6 ways of assessing these cognitive skills, right? And we're going to score everybody from 1 to 10, right? Now, you're only going to do well on that if you score well on each cognitive skill, right? But the problem you've got, if you're neurodiverse, you might be on the autism spectrum, and you might be an incredible mathematician, for example, but you might struggle with social interaction. You might struggle with communication in the traditional sense in an organization. You might struggle in many other areas, but you might have the most incredible mathematical mind. Einstein, for example, right, was believed to be dyslexic, and possibly he was neurodiverse, right? So who knows what threads. But absolutely struggled with stuff like remembering times tables and stuff. Yeah, think about his mind. Think about what he achieved, right? So if we said that he had to score well across all of those 6 cognitive areas, he wouldn't. Therefore, he'd never get through your process. So when we sit and we look at talent and we go, well, we need them to be able to do all these things, we are missing out on a great opportunity. And a lot of early stage organizations are often thinking we need broad, we need somebody who can do everything, right? But when you're at the very beginning of developing your technology, your process, whatever it is, the work that you do, that is the greatest opportunity for innovation. That is the greatest opportunity for creating something that is transformative, that is going to ultimately change the way that people think. But if you go down the route of going, but we need people who can get stuck in all these different areas, then you've got these groups of people who may not push the boundaries in the way that you really truly want them to. And you can see that across organizations more broadly, but definitely in that early stage for organizations, it's even more important that you take an Einstein and ensure that they're working on that piece of work, that when you get further on and you can no longer adapt and change it like you would, because the framework's already built at that very early stage, you're not looking back thinking, I wish I had built that slightly differently. I wish I had thought about that slightly differently, because the opportunity may well be gone. So spikes in those areas, like mine is creativity, right? I have a spike, but I can't do maths, right? You've got no chance. I bombed out big time. I can't. There's other stuff I can't do, like organizational skills and what have you. But if you employ me for that stuff, I'm done for. I'm in trouble. So this is where organizations need to start thinking differently. CEOs and founders and leaders, if they can start to think about that, then they'll get it. And they can start to adapt their roles so that they're solving the greatest of problems as early on as possible.
Talk to me about that, actually. You consider yourself neurodiverse and you work with a lot of people who are considered neurodiverse. How do you get the most out of your week? How do you plan your week? Is it the regular 9 to 5 kind of way? Like what is your way to imagine you have a really productive week? What made it so? How did you manage to get things done? Like, what did you do?
So part of the way that my brain works is I'm able to hyper focus. I'm able to, if you give me a piece of work that I'm passionate about and that I'm good at and I've got energy for, I could be doing that work from 5 a.m. until 2 in the morning. I could, like, right through. You can be. Now the challenge I have is that I have family, I have other responsibilities, I have to cook food, I have to take them to school. So my days are naturally disrupted in a way that I have no control over. So that impacts me, and that will impact others, right? Stuff that's outside of their control, that they've got responsibility for. So that means I can't be as productive as I'd like every single day, because I may wake up going, boom, my brain is going, I'm up for it. I know that if I could just work for 3 days solid and not eat, not sleep, I'd like create something incredible. But you can't always, you've got to break it up. So I've got to go with the energy when I can, and I've got to pick the stuff that's really powerful and meaningful and that is going to make the difference, and put all the energy into it at that point, because I may then get distracted too many times, and therefore it may be difficult for me to do the hyper-focused work that I need to do. So in those moments, I need like lists of stuff that I can do that don't take very long. So then I can go, right, I need to go and check my accounts and that they're up to date and receipts have added. And so you've got all these little jobs that are banked that I can go and do to fill the gaps, because otherwise my mind will always be going to what is the big and exciting stuff that I can do and achieve. And therefore you can go days without not really getting stuff done. So part of what I think each day is by the end of the day, if I've not done something meaningful, like when it gets to the end of the day, I need to do so. I need to grab something that's meaningful and tangible that I can say, right, I've done that. So that's at least something that needs to be done that's done today or done over a couple of days. And then at least if I can carry on with the creative dynamic stuff as well, then that can skip a couple of days and it doesn't have too much of a negative impact on me. But that's the reality of the way my brain works. Where I've seen it fail is where I've worked for an organization where the role was very strategic, problem solving, looking into the future, implementing solutions. To overnight, that role became very operational delivery focused because it's because COVID happened, but other things happened at the same time, which meant the role went from here to here, which was like me going from flying through the sky as Superman to suddenly be surrounded in kryptonite. It was one of the most significant periods in my life where I recognized the challenges most, because it went from one day feeling empowered and like I was in my area of strength to the next day literally feeling like I'd been completely disabled, and still having to do everything else, like look after your family, keep everything else going, try and stay fit and healthy. So I'd say that is the most important thing, and that's why organizations can help individuals, but also organizations and managers often are the people who put kryptonite. Now I can choose to go, today is not the day I'm going to put that kryptonite in front of myself. So I know I've got to do it, but I'm going to do it next week, because if I try and do that today, that could blow my whole week apart because I'm going to feel disabled by it. I need to find a mechanism to be able to do it, which might be that I pay money for someone else to do it. That's the reality. I might go, it's just too much for me to do it. I'm going to pay someone else. And then I'm going to go off and do the thing I was going to do, which only happened recently. I was procrastinating over something. And in the end, I just paid the professional to come in and do it. Boom, we knocked it out of the park. And we did it in a long, hard-working day. But that's you need to be thinking about these things all the time and supporting individuals to think in that same way. And that's why around 50% of entrepreneurs are neurodiverse, because they want to have the control themselves to decide what they want to do when they do it, but they also want to lean on their strengths as much as they can. So there's an impactful figure for you. 50%.
Man, I couldn't relate anymore. Like literally looking at this week, now it's Wednesday when we're recording this podcast. Monday, I had a full day meeting fantastic clients, coming up with opportunities. I was on, man. I was fully creative, productive. My brain was working. Yesterday, Tuesday, I had one of those which I like to call LED, low energy days. I slept well. I just woke up and nothing, like you can, maybe I can call somebody, do a little bit of admin work, but I can't do anything creative. My brain is, but again, I teach that stuff, right? So I'm very self-aware in those kind of days to just be kind to myself and try and focus my energy on things that I can actually be helpful. Sometimes it could be just go for a walk, listen to some courses, like learn, read a book, whatever. And then again, today I woke up, I'm fully fresh, I'm I'm full of energy and those kind of things, and I don't need to be stuck with the 9 to 5. We spoke about this during when I presented to you the draft for my TEDx, when we were discussing this word human resources. What does that mean, human resources? Humans are not assets or resources. Humans are humans, right? They're people. We can't treat people as your laptop. Your laptop is going to give you the speed and the result that you probably could expect. That's not the same with humans.
Exactly.
Like you look at Monday to Friday, every day the human is going to come and be a little bit more or less productive, be a little bit more or less tired, more or less emotional, right? So we're going like this, or maybe like this, or maybe sometimes just like down, right? And that's fine. That's fine. Understanding and appreciating this, and just being really kind to our people. When we attract the right people with the right values, who are hardworking, who are ambitious, you don't need to push people to deliver. You actually have to be kind, and you have to be the person that says, hey, take a break. You've been working too hard. Yeah, but I have so much. I know. Take it easy. what is the one thing you need to get done today? Is there something urgent? Well, this, okay. The other 20 things on your list that you just shared with me, if you do something, it's just a bonus. You don't have to do it now. Just take it easy, right? So this whole thing about time management, and it has to be in the specific way. I mean, I'm teaching time management all the time. I'm teaching frameworks and strategies, and all of this could work or not. You got to try it out, see what works for you. I'm a very much of a list kind of guy. um I'm a list guy, man. I love spreadsheets, right? Because my mind is so around the place. I'm super creative and I have so many ideas that I need to organize them, and I need to define what are the core outcomes, what are the core results. So when I want to get into this fun stuff, I also need to evaluate, is that meaningful for the business? And all right, let me focus. But this is how I work. Doesn't mean that you should be like that. And I'm wondering, what's your way to prioritize? Like, do you also do lists? Do you kind of just let your intuition guide you? Like, what do you do to define the priorities and to stay focused?
Yeah, lists in that context just don't work for me as well, because I forget to look at them and forget to use them and forget to understand them. So that's the problem, you know. So I've done all the trial of lists and spreadsheets, and ultimately it doesn't work. But that's knowing your brain, right? And knowing that, again, my brain needs to feel something, it needs to see it and touch it. And my one thing about dyslexic brains is seeing things in 3D. Whereas other people don't tend to see things in 3D, they see things in 2D. And that's just to understand. That's why you get a lot of dyslexic people.
Sorry. What do you mean seeing things in 3D? Like when you're thinking, when you're
Yeah. When you're thinking,
imagining?
you're able to, almost like visualize things and look around them, see them in 3D, and see them. That's why I get a lot of people who are dyslexic are often creative, but they're also good, maybe as engineers or design, because they're able to visualize something in a way that somebody else can't. They're able to move around it in their mind. But again, that's why I told you, if I can see something, if I can hold it, and then I can then come up with all different kinds of ideas, because I can see where the potential problems are. Whereas you or someone else might work better with the lists and the spreadsheets, or somebody else might work better with having just a conversation around it, and that might do it. So it's really important to kind of understand what is going to energize somebody to ensure that you get the best out of them. And you mentioned around being able to select sometimes, or to support somebody around selecting what they do. If you're on a low energy day, sometimes the best thing you can do is to find the energy. And the energy, you may not know where it comes from, but it might come from the walk. It might come from a bit of exercise, a run, or whatever it is, whatever you like to do. But it also, I find, can come from, like you said, listening to off the wall podcasts, or go listen to the news and think about that. Or it's looking for the trigger in your mind that gets the energy going. And it's like, it might even just be a conversation with somebody, right? That changes the direction of your day. And even when you're going out to meet people, sometimes on a social level, you might think, I don't feel it today. I don't really feel like I want to go meet these people. But then in the end, you've arranged it. You're going, and you go and feel the energy, and you sit with them, and poof, the energy comes from a conversation. Something triggers and sparks your mind. We can start to think about what those things are. We can start to recognize when those triggers happen, when those moments. I find they happen when I talk to people who are also neurodiverse, right? I find the energy comes, but also I can find that energy can be too much if I talk to too many people in one day who are from that space, and I'm worn out and bombed out, and I need to just sit quietly in a corner. So it's knowing that there's a tipping point with everything. Too much of this information, too much of doing that. If you ran for too long, you'd get too tired. If you talk too long, you might get, some people can talk longer than others. Some people can think longer than others. Some people can experience different things for longer than others. And if you can start to understand your own limits and boundaries, and your manager or leader or whatever can start to understand them across teams, then you know where to push and pull. And that becomes quite powerful in itself as well.
Man, I love that you put the energy management within the time management framework, because it is the truth. Like even if you are a very super planned kind of person and love to schedule things and put them in your calendar and stuff, you need to have in mind, let me have a look at my day, let me have a look at all the meetings and the way I structured my day. Is that going to allow me to be at the top of my energy with the simple stuff? Drinking water, taking breaks, talking to people. Yesterday on my LED, low energy day, I know myself. If I have to do a lot of emailing and administration, I'm done. You know, my energy is gone. I'm a talkative person. I need to talk to people. My energy comes, from talking to you, talking to people from my team. And then yesterday I was like, oh, I need to call somebody. Like I just need to call somebody so I can get rolling, right? So that's the energy management is a major part. Your mental state, your energy state is directly positively correlated to your productivity and to your happiness, which is the last part I want to kind of touch on too. Happiness at the workplace. What's your take on that? Is happiness at the workplace required? Is it part of your philosophy? And how can we generate more happiness and joy for the people, for our teams, for the people that we lead?
So this, it crosses, and this is what we need to understand. I use a Covey term, which is seek first to understand, then to be understood. Right? And I try to use that in as much of my life as possible. It's not always easy because your energy may go to, I want to tell you how I feel. Right? I want to tell you because I'm annoyed, I'm frustrated, I'm tired, I'm angry, or I'm happy, and I want to tell you, and I'm excited or whatever about telling you. But you may not be ready to listen, right? And until I've understood where you're at, where your mind's at, how you feel, how do I know how to communicate with you? And it's my responsibility there to understand you, because otherwise you are not going to understand me, and therefore I'm not going to be heard, right? So if we all take that responsibility ourselves, then that makes it a much more powerful experience. So happiness isn't like this, it isn't just this thing that I feel and experience. I may feel it and experience it because of the gift of others, because others gift me their time, their emotional feeling. They gift me their happiness, and therefore I feel happy. They smile at me, I smile back at them. So it's this experience that we have together, often not isolated on our own. And whether we're happy or not is definitely impacted by others. So that we need to consider that in our environment, that not only can we make other people feel happy, but we can also impact, it can be impacted on us and our happiness by a variety of things that are going on within our workplace. So I'm going to be happy if I get to do less admin, but I've got somebody in the team who is very much focused around making sure everything's in its place as it should be. They're not going to be happy if they've not got everything in their place. So there's a balance. If I don't do my bit of admin, they may not be happy. I've impacted on their happiness, right? But by them forcing me to do too much admin, they're impacting on my happiness. So where do we find the levers to make sure that we allow everybody to be in their happy space? Because when it's about feeling good about the work you do, and if you can't do the work you do because other people are not delivering on their bit, then that is going to impact on it. So I think happiness is intertwined in a lot of other variabilities, and we have to consider them to ensure that we can truly be happy, and also to allow ourselves to be true within our environment. And the idea of bringing your whole self to work, we can only do that if we're being more accepting and understanding of others and their needs. And you see the greatest conflict often not between people who are maybe close in their thinking and their styles, but often where they may have very different approaches and styles, very organized versus very disorganized. And especially in leadership roles, you get somebody who's focused on data, compliance, risk, legal, and then you get somebody who's focused on innovation, creativity, sales, whatever. And they're at opposite ends. They both sit on the board, maybe, or a leadership level, they could be arguing all the time because one is not willing to do what the other's asking. So we got to find those areas in between where this person can do enough to make that person happy and that person can do enough to make that person happy without making each other unhappy. It sounds simple, right? And it is, but it's about being willing to listen and understand the other person in this situation to ensure that you can have your happiness, right? So it's not everybody else's responsibility again to make sure you're happy. You got to do some work yourself, and then we can all be happy.
What a great way to wrap up this episode, man. And what an important reminder that sometimes we try to look for something super complicated, happiness strategies, and let's make a retreat. And what if you just start listening? What if you start putting a little bit of time to understand your people? What do they care about? Are there some things that they do that they really don't like? Is there some challenges they have at the workplace? But listen, really listen. And by listening, mean taking action. Make some changes. Do something little or big to show them that you care, right? This can increase the happiness, fulfillment, satisfaction, and talent retention with, I don't know, I don't want to say percentage now, but you know what I mean, right? It's crazy how sometimes the small things done consistently over time can make a tremendous difference. So thank you so much, Theo, for being with us. What an insightful episode. I'm fired up. I'm excited right now. And hopefully a lot of the people listening as well. And once again, guys, I'm putting my name under behind this guy, Theo Smith, behind Dynamis Group. What they do is just world class, and it's coming from a place of care, from a place of love. And with that being said, I would like to ask you, Theo, to tell me where could people find you, find your podcast, tell me again about the book, and basically what you do. How could they hire you to maybe deliver a keynote, consulting? Just tell me, where could people find you?
Yeah, of course. So book you can find on Amazon, any other good bookstore, almost all over the world. There are also some other ways of accessing it that are coming out. Publisher Kogan page, you can also contact them as well. And we're up for Business Book of the Year in the UK in a couple of months as well. LinkedIn, you can contact me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. LinkedIn is Theo Smith UK. You'll find me there, but you'll see an image of me anyway. I come up probably pretty quickly. Or Neurodiversity on the internet, and you'll also find me quite quickly there. If you want to contact me, please do. And there are a variety of different services that we offer, linked to Dynamis Group. And you can also contact us directly via the website, Dynamis.
What's the name of your podcast?
It's Neurodiversity, Eliminating Kryptonite and Enabling Superheroes.
Boom.
Everywhere.
So
you get it everywhere. It's on all good podcast hosts.
If you guys enjoyed this episode, I'm sure you enjoyed Theo's podcast as well. And once again, for those of you listening who didn't catch the name of the book, Neurodiversity at Work by Theo Smith, go check it out in all the good bookstores, online and offline. So thank you once again for everybody for being with us, for making it to the end. Let us know, send us a message, an email, drop a line to Theo. Let us know what was for you the key takeaway from this episode, something that really stuck with you. And if you enjoyed this episode, obviously you can go and subscribe to Productivity Mastery on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any other platform. If there is somebody from your network that really needs to hear this, maybe a leader that wants to step up their performance, maybe there's somebody from your network who's considering neurodiverse, and maybe we'll get to learn more about who they are and how they act and really thrive. Maybe you want to share this episode with them. Let's spread the word. Let's spread some goodness and care. Thank you so much, Theo, and see you once again next episode of Productivity Mastery.